so you get to Kansas, you finish out kind of high school in Kansas, or like if you're like the time where colleges are looking at you is probably while you're at Kansas then.
Yeah,
right?
while
like
I was
you're
in
like
Kansas.
kind of 16 to 18 years old. You're like really kind of developing, and then college is in the mindset.
Yeah.
Are you thinking time to go play football in college when you're that age?
Oh yeah. Like at that point, I was I would say the prideful, egotistical high school football player. In my mind, I was this future college football star.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, whatever scholarships land on the table, I'm going to have an open mind towards them all. And then one of my big dream schools came on, University of Nebraska. And I was like, okay, I'm going here, period. Yeah. And then tragedy struck a little bit, after that. But I did have the schools I was looking for.
Sure.
Yeah.
So tell me about like what that tragedy was, how it all happened. Like, how does that?
Yeah, it sort of came out of nowhere, man. Like, because I'm riding this, my mind is like in the clouds, feet on the ground, and I'm running after my dreams. And as I'm at this point, where I'm deciding, hey, okay, I'm getting close to this scholarship and having this thing go the way I want it to go. I was like, there's still this void, this emptiness in me where I'm trying to figure things out, because football ain't necessarily filling that little void. So I went off and looked into, having my dream girl. Like, maybe I can find a chick right here in my school that I'm in love with, or in the city that I'm in love with. So I finally met this young girl that I started dating, and I end up being a weekend or so in dating her. We're hanging out at this park, and as we're sitting at this park getting ready to go to a movie, all of a sudden she gets a phone call. Me being prideful and egotistical, college football future star, I take her phone and I'm like, I got you. Like, I know this is that guy calling, which was her ex, and I pick it up. I'm like, hello, and the ex says, yo, who is this? Why you with my girl? And I'm like, hold on, man, this is my girl. You gotta chill out. My girl. I'm talking about. But I end up telling them, no, dude, this is my girl. And sort of really unwise thing to do, I say, come where I am. And I gave my address. That was totally unwise. That was foolish. But needless to say, I hung up, not thinking much of it. Like, this guy, anyway, if he come, he's like 5'9". I'm this, almost 6'2" football. So we're sitting, and all of a sudden, 10 minutes later, after listening to this rap song album called Get Rich or Die Trying by 50 Cent, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, this van peels into the parking lot. It immediately catches our attention. And they park about 20 feet away. 5 guys jump out of the car. I'm not talking about burgers. And they're walking towards us. And we get out and we start... Well, no, actually, it was just me. I got out. I got out the car at that point. I said, you stay here. She was getting ready to get out to try to... I was like, no, you stay here. And fearfully, yet pridefully, passionately, I get out. And I'm walking towards them. They're walking towards me. I'm nervous out of my mind. It's racing, heart's beating. And as I get about 5 feet away from them, one of the guys pull out a pistol. He reaches for his waistband. He waves it in the air. I'm like, oh, he got a gun. Like, I would see things like this in movies, but to think like I'm literally,
happening in Topeka, Kansas. Like where you're at.
Exactly. And I turn, I run, I try to run, I slip and I fall, and he stands over me. Boom, boom. 2 gunshots rang out. And then I am just in awe. I'm scared. I'm nervous, because at this point, I didn't know if my life was about to end right there in that moment. Those guys run off, and I realized I didn't know like fully if I had been shot yet, because the adrenaline. I got up and I ran. But as I ran back towards the car and I dive at the left side of the car, I look up into the driver's seat or the passenger seat, and the girl's gone. And it's pitch black, and I see these headlights pulling up behind me. I'm thinking they're going to jump out the car and finish me. And I'm laying on this cold cement, and by the grace of God, they peel out and they leave. But in this pitch black, on this cold cement, And all of a sudden, I feel this warm blood trickling up my back. And at that point, I knew I was shot, and I went into a panic attack.
Yeah.
And for the first time ever, I cried out to the God of the universe, the person I would hear about. But needless to say, I needed him more than ever in that moment. And I would say, essentially, he met me there in that dark moment.
Yeah. So who came for you? What happened?
So who came for me, which is a great question. You know, in that moment, again, being all alone, I came to this realization I was anxious and scared. I came to this realization that my coaches aren't there. My parents aren't there. My friends aren't there.
Yeah.
The girl isn't there. Did I ever live? You know, the reality, what was there was the fear of death, that I was going to die. But by the grace of God, he sent a man that I could never even recall where he is now today, but he picked me up, threw me in his pickup truck, which was like 20 minutes later, which felt like an eternity later. Sure. And he throws me in his truck, and he gets me to the hospital. And I finally get in the hospital, and this dude's shirt is straight red. It was white, but it was straight red. And I just was like, wow, like, because of my blood. And it was just crazy, bro. Yeah. And then I finally, got to this place where my life was essentially saved, you know? I think one of the big things I was able to take from that is, wow, the brevity of life, how short life is. And I didn't deserve to be alive at that point, but, you know, it was the grace of God. And I'll just pray for the man that shot me every day, which I can tell you more about his story, but he ends up doing about 3 years, but he kept getting in trouble in jail. It went to about 6 years because of the extended time. But when he got out, sadly, he was at this place, a party, and he continued in that life he was living, and he was shot down, gunned down, and he's paralyzed today from the last thing I've heard. And I keep the guy in my prayers, and I tried to write him letters, but I've never got a return. But it's tough.
Yeah, it is. Like it's, you know, you go from like, you know, like, I am on top of the world, I'm a superstar football player, I'm going to go to college somewhere, to like laying in a parking lot in the dark with no one around, with just your thoughts. Wow. Which is a scary place. Yeah. And then you feel like that warm, you feel that warm sensation of the blood. Yeah. And you know that you've definitely been shot, because your adrenaline starts running off. I can't imagine the thoughts you kept having, the places you go to.
Like literally, the girl I was chasing and I was in love with, I felt forsaken because she wasn't there. Yeah. Like the people who I always depended on and loved weren't there. It wasn't that they didn't care, but they didn't know. Nor did they have the power to be omniscient and be everywhere at all times to all people. Like, but I knew that I had, this is why my faith is so strong. I had to call out to the God who knew me, man. And I'm so thankful he saved me.
Do you have, before that kind of time, did you go to church? Were you, did you kind of have the same connection, or
rebel.
Just,
I was a rebel. I would say a hedonist, like, it was all about selfish desire, pursuit, my way, my will all the time. And very selfish, but I think one of the big things was my grandparents, my mom's faith, people who would come into the FCA programs and speak to us. Those people were the ones who really marked my faith and sort of plant the seed so it can flourish in that moment. Yeah.
So you go from that moment, you're in, you're like laying in hospital. Like, I mean, literally a new lease on life. Yeah. Right?
And one of the humbling things about being in that hospital, it wasn't when the doctor had to come in and do his thing, or the nurses telling me, like, the nurses asking questions back and forth to one another whether or not this guy's gonna survive and this and that. But the most humbling thing that happened while I was in that hospital, which felt like, on the verge of death, was when my dad had walked in. This bravado, military man had walked in, and his face was flooded with tears. Like, that was the first time I had ever seen my dad cry in my life. And it did something to me far more than that bullet wound could ever did.
Yeah.
To see just his heart and his humility and his care for me as his son. It gave me a new perspective on, it's hard for even me. And that can do a lot for a kid.